Okay, perfect. Well, first of all, thanks very much for having me along. I will try and slow down my voice. I'm conscious I have quite a strong Scottish accent sometimes. So if you don't understand me or you want me to slow down, then please just shout out. I will not be offended by it. As Driscoll says, my name is Simon Driscoll, and I've been very fortunate to be a Salesforce customer for the last 10 years, but I've also headed up the Scotland user group for the last 4 years. So between the three guys who pull this together, I know exactly how stressful it can be to get kind of content together and the kind of audience and make sure that you get something away from it. So just a bit kind of a background of me. I say I've been a customer for the last 10 years. I've worked for multi-billion-dollar organisations. I was the head of Salesforce for an organisation that had about 25,000 users globally. And about 2.5 years ago, I made a very brave decision to move to Lightning. I think even Salesforce thought I was quite silly at that particular point, because 2 years ago it was still very new, there was a lot that wasn't working, and I think over the last couple of years it's just came on tremendously, and we'll show you some of those elements with it. I don't have a huge amount of slides, so don't worry about it too much. I'm going to actually get into the application and show you. What would be interesting to understand though is just a quick kind of show of hands of who's using Lightning. Okay. Actively, or they just switched it on? Okay, the hands slightly changed there. Okay, so what we're going to take you through with this over the next kind of 10 minutes or so is kind of looking at the roadmap element of it, your thought process about moving to Salesforce Lightning, and then we'll actually take you into it and kind of show people, if you haven't seen it before, and the capabilities. The winter release is obviously coming out in the next few weeks. Again, it's just jam-packed, and you'll notice with the last several releases, 95% of those release documents now are all focused around Lightning. So Salesforce have very much heavily invested in that application. I don't want to steal too much thunder from Chet. We were very fortunate enough last May to be on stage together at the World Tour in London, where we spoke around certain elements like this. So it's great that a year down the line we're kind of back together actually to talk about how it's progressing. So the first thing that I always look at is, what is your migration plan? Because as much as it is just a button switch within Salesforce to enable Lightning, you can actually do a lot of damage if you just switch it on. Because what will happen is it will switch it on for your standard profile users. So therefore, if you haven't went through the thought process of what you're actually trying to achieve with Lightning, then you will make a lot of errors along the way. I've worked with a lot of companies over the last couple of years. I've seen it done the right way, I've seen it done the wrong way, and we'll kind of give you a bit of the combination of that. So for me, it's very much, it does follow that kind of trailhead kind of theme of what's your starting position, and it's kind of looking at your initial assessment. What is your reason actually for migrating? At the moment, Salesforce are not coming on your door to say, we're going to decommission Classic, but who's to say that might not happen further down the line? You're also missing out on a huge amount of new features that are coming. And I would say, and I was talking to a couple of guys kind of the networking piece before, if you've done a lot of customization, then yes, it's going to take you much longer. This isn't an overnight process. I'm not going to stand here and say that is. For the organisation that I worked for previously, it took us a good 6 months of just that initial assessment piece, understanding the customization element of what had we customized, what would work, what wouldn't work. Had a lot been built on Java buttons, Visual Force pages, all of these types of elements that a lot of the time wasn't supported. A lot of it is now supported. There are a lot of good tools, which I'll show you later on, that you can use to be able to help you, that will pinpoint your areas of what will work within Lightning and what won't. But that is kind of your initial part, is actually understand kind of what you're trying to do, and then actually deploy it into your sandbox. Please don't deploy it into production. If you're on professional and you don't have a sandbox, I would heavily recommend investing in one. It's something that you will find huge benefit from doing. But deploy it into your sandbox, start to do those types of test elements with it, and then get your system admin guys on board. These are the guys that have been probably building stuff within Classic for the last 5, 10, 15 years or so. So they're going to be the ones that are going to panic the most, because now you don't actually need all the coding, you can do all these drag and drops within Lightning App Builder. And that's, first of all, these guys are going to panic because they think they're going to potentially lose their job because you're taking a lot of the coding and the complex. Now, I've been a system admin in the past, that was where I started off. So I understand as a system admin, we make life much more complicated than what it is sometimes. And therefore, that it does give them reason for concern. So get them involved into it, doing the testing, doing training. One thing is definitely to get them onto all of the Lightning trailheads. And what I've done in the past is I've actually made it part of their KPIs. So as part of their annual goals and their targets for the business, they're actually set a certain amount of badges and certain trailheads that they have to achieve. And that's not the quick ones where it's the 5-minute trailhead. It is the 9 hours ones where you're going into a lot of detail. And once you've kind of looked at those elements, that's when you start to kind of move into your phase 1 of production deployment. And for me, we done a lot of the assessment within the system admin guys. So we had 65 admins who tested it laboriously probably for about 8 weeks. We'd done a lot of assessment from that point, and then we pushed it into production only for the system admins. And that is the beauty of migrating to Lightning. When you switch it on, you don't necessarily have to switch it on for every user. You can switch it on at individual level, you can switch it on at profile level. It's really within your control. And once we had kind of deployed it within production, it gives you that of how does it actually work in the real world. As much as we want the sandbox to look like real world, it doesn't necessarily all the time. It doesn't have all of the integrations with different systems and all of these different types of elements. And then we moved into an area of super users or Salesforce champions. You might call them something different within your business. For me, where you have 25,000 users globally and you only have a team of 65 people managing Salesforce, you cannot manage all of those people. So we appointed a super user within each office. So we had 195 offices across the globe. So we appointed 195 super users. They were effectively those go-to people within each office, and they were to test it. Within, again, they were actually testing it back in the sandbox environment of how would it work within their day-to-day environment. And it was their job to come back to the system admin guys. We would have a monthly call, or at that point actually we were having a 2-weekly call on challenges that they were seeing, what was working, what wasn't working. And that was still, again, going right back to this, what's happening with their initial assessment. Thankfully, we kind of moved through this. We gave them hands-on training. Again, we started to migrate them onto elements of trailheads. So these guys are not system admins, they are business users. They have a normal day job. But Salesforce started to kind of formalize as part of their role as well. Once we were comfortable with this section, we then deployed it into production again for just those super users. So again, they started to be able to utilize it, using it in their day-to-day environment. And we actually started to monitor on the users on who were switching between Classic and Lightning. So there is a free tool out there where you can start to monitor if your users are using it in Classic or if they're switching to Lightning. And then it's a case of kind of feeding that through kind of the management teams. So we kind of deployed it within there. And then we started to look at our exec sponsorship, communication rollout. For me, when I joined the organization, we had an adoption rate of under 20%, which on 25,000 users is ridiculous in my opinion. So therefore, this wasn't just about migrating from Classic to Lightning, it was actually about regenerating Salesforce within the organization. We rebranded it, we gave it a new lease of life, and for me that had to come from the very top. So we involved our chairman, we involved all of our seniors execs, and got them very much on board. They started coming to our weekly calls with the senior management teams, and actually getting them to publish a lot of the messaging out as well. And then once we kind of communicated all of that, we communicated it out to the business that we were going to migrate over. that they were going to start to see changes within Salesforce, where the benefits would be from them. We then started to move into end user training. So we done our training all face-to-face. We didn't migrate anybody to Lightning until they had been to a training session. And that training session was a 3-hour session. And it went right back to the basics of how do you create a lead? How do you convert a lead? How do you create an opportunity? How do you create a contact? Everything that they actually do in their day-to-day job, but we'd done it all within Lightning. And then, so we got them on a laptop, we gave them a sandbox that they could do things within. But the first 45 minutes of that 3-hour session, our chairman actually went to every single training session and delivered the corporate message of why we'd selected Salesforce, where we were going with Salesforce, actually getting the users to understand our roadmap as well. And I think that's where we've had the benefit of users now feeling engaged with it. It's not just a tool that management have sat there and said, this is what you're moving to. We actually have engaged them at all stages. At the end of the 3-hour training session, Lightning was then enabled for that user. So by the time they left the training room and got back to their desk, Lightning was switched on for them. And we started to monitor it through that way. And that's when obviously it was kind of moved into production. So it took us probably a good space of 6 months to migrate everybody over, because we'd done it very hands-on. Now to me, some would say that's quite a long process. It's also sometimes not achievable. However, it's had the best results. And the successes that we did see from it was things like, we did reduce 45% of administration time. And I'll take you through some of that when we kind of dive into the org in a minute of how we actually get to that. But that's the thing, is part of my role as head of the Salesforce team at that particular point, I never advised our board that I was going to walk round with and give them 100,000 euros in cash and savings. It wasn't going to happen. What you can do is actually save people's time. And that's things that execs don't see. They take for very much granted. But if you reduce people's time on administration, it will mean it will eventually bring in more revenue for the organisation. So for me, that was a key element, was to reduce all of the admin. Salesforce is a great tool. In Classic, what I always found was you had to go look for the information. Lightning pushes it out to your user, and we'll show you some of that in a minute. We had 63% increase in sales engagements, and that was more around from our sales team, because now with the flows, and I know Chet's going to touch on some of those elements later on, but with sales paths and the kind of flows that are now available within Salesforce, you can really walk your salespeople through it. Sales guys that I had before always seen it as an admin tool, or they just put in their opportunities that they knew they were going to win. So you would see your pipeline would just go from 0 to 100. There was never any in between. And that in between bit is also really, really important. So we engaged them much more from those elements. We've seen 72% increase in efficiency. So when we moved Lightning into our telemarketing teams, people who were doing very high volume calls, the system was now able to generate much more productivity for them. An 81% increase in adoption. So as I say, when I joined, we were sitting in the under 20s. If we were lucky, on a good day, we got to over 20%. I left the organisation in May of last year, and when I left, we were sitting on nearly 98%. And that's a very short period of time that we were able to do that. But again, that's the benefits of moving to where you're now showing your users what they can do, rather than your user having to look for it. Some of the things to consider though is, there are still some things that are slightly patchy and you do need to kind of think about them. Standard profiles, if you do use standard profiles at the moment and you enable Lightning, it will switch them on for those people regardless. So I would recommend, if you're going to switch it on in production, you move away from those standard profiles and move them on to custom profiles. Browser version. I know this is kind of a risky topic, I suppose. On the 16th of December last year, Salesforce stopped supporting Lightning on Internet Explorer 11. Now you did have the option to extend support, but unfortunately if you hadn't done it by that point, you will have missed out on it. So you now do need to use Lightning within Chrome, Safari, Firefox, these types of elements. If you access it now within Internet Explorer and you hadn't opted in for the additional support, it will just automatically revert you back to Classic, which is frustrating if you've done a lot of work within Lightning and then your users never see it. CTI integration was something I have to say I never thought about in the very early stages. We were a big CTI integration user. So if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's effectively connecting it with your telephony system. And what happens within Classic is, if anybody has used CTI in the past or is using it at the moment within Classic, your dial pad sits on the side panel. Within Lightning, there is no side panel. So where does your dial pad go? And that comes down to your CTI partner. So I know some of the big players, kind of like New Voice Media, etc., have obviously now are Lightning ready and they do have solutions, but it's a conversation you have to make sure that you have with your partners. And that actually goes for any of the other integrations that you've built into Salesforce. So anything that you've purchased from the change, make sure that they actually have a Lightning ready connection to it, because you could start to lose some of that functionality. And bespoke training materials, I suppose it's one of the bigger ones, because again, in the past what I've seen is companies will spend a lot of money on a lot of training material. If all of your training material at the moment is within Classic and you're now going to move to Lightning, all those pages look completely different. So you're going to have to invest in the time and the money possibly to make sure you change all of those documentations over. If you've used a partner as well to do all of your bespoke training material, you're going to have to re-engage with them. It's something you have to budget for. It's not about just, as I say, switching it on and all of these elements. It goes back to that initial assessment point. All of these elements are around your profiles, your browsers. We were an organisation that in some offices was still using Internet Explorer 7. So to even talk to somebody about going to Internet Explorer 11, to then even mention Chrome was a crazy idea from some of our IT guys. So there are some tough conversations that need to happen with your IT team as well. Understand what, if you are on Internet Explorer and you're not allowed to download things like Chrome or Firefox, you need to go and understand and have those conversations with your IT departments, because some companies still do lock that down quite a lot. Okay, so there's been quite a lot of kind of content kind of within that slide. So I just want to do is now show you some of it. So this is the Lightning homepage. So for anybody that hasn't seen it, you will notice it's very different. What you will probably see if you have switched it on for your own, you will have a performance chart there. In my opinion, the performance chart really doesn't give a huge amount of information. It's not as customizable as, and it's only my own opinion, that it could be. The benefits now of is you can start to customize that homepage as much as you want for your individual users, for your management teams, for your execs, right down to your sales reps. So that when they log in the morning, no longer do they actually have to go and look for their dashboard. You can actually just create their homepage as their dashboard. And it's very much intuitive now. And again, that's when I go back to the point where we've seen an increase in our sales team engagement, was because now they actually seen it as soon as they logged on. They start to see things like the assistant. And I would love to find somebody that has a sales team that keeps all of their opportunities up to date and are very good at keeping their close dates up to date. I haven't come across one yet in the last 10 years. If anybody has got any ideas how to fix that, then I'm open to discussion on it. But these are the things now where it will start to tell your users. So your opportunity now doesn't have any activities. The close date has now passed. And you've probably in the past built a report for it, you've built it on a dashboard, and you're expecting those guys to go and look at it. I've been a salesperson, I'm not going to go and look for it. However, if it's telling me straight there on my homepage that it's something that I need to do, I'm more than likely to go and do it. And that will kind of, anything then that happens after a 30-day period will start to pop up. It's one of those things on the assistant, you always actually want it to be blank. It's one of those things that you put it on there and you just hope there's never going to be anything there, if your team is keeping up to date with things. But if they're not, then it's there. And also then from a management perspective, you can start to be able to drill down within those elements. And obviously if you get to a point where it is done, you can then just start to move things away. Again, your kind of different charts. I've just kind of created a bit of some dummy ones here at the moment around opportunities by stage. So looking at kind of all your forecast or your pipeline as such, and you can kind of customize that to your heart's content. You can then start to move other elements into the homepage. So pull in chatter. I'm a huge chatter user. It's something I think is a very powerful tool.
Can I ask a slightly leading question? I take it you can have reports, so if you've got a report of your activities that you're meant to be working on today, you could have that as your chart instead.
Yes, and obviously you've got the view report button here, so if you click on it, it will take you right into the data as well, so you don't need to go and look for the report now. That's something that's relatively new. You used to be able to see the chart but not actually see the data behind it. It was a bit strange, but it's now something that is now available. And you have the ability, if I just go to here with edit page, this takes you into what is the Lightning App Builder. This is where you now start to be able to drag and drop different elements that you want to have within there. So if we do want a complete dashboard, we can pull those dashboards in. And it will give you the ones, obviously, if they're public. So if they are private dashboards and elements like that, it still matches what your sharing rules are within Salesforce. So don't worry that all of a sudden you're now going to publish all of your financial data out to all of your users. It becomes customizable for what they want, so you can now see it's actually now pulled in the whole dashboard. If I want to remove my top deals, so this is maybe for some of your admin guys, they don't necessarily don't have any opportunities, make it customizable to them. That's what you will find that brings your engagement and your adoption level up. Because at the moment what will tend to happen is it's probably all very static and everybody has a very similar page and it's not actually relevant to them of what their day-to-day job is. So down the left-hand side, this is where you have all of your different kind of elements that you can then start to pull in. You can pull in text boxes, so you can do things like links to your intranet pages. So any other links that you have, if they're URLs, you can pull it in. If you want to publish different messages out to the company, out to particular users as well, you can then start to be able to customize that. If you've got custom objects, so if you've purchased things from the App Exchange, so even things like DocuSign, if you're using CTI integrations, they will all then show within that kind of customized area. This is just kind of a demo org, so there's nothing kind of connected to it, but they're all kind of listed within there, and you can start to pull all of that information through as well. And if you've done kind of any API kind of integrations, so if you've got other system information, you can start to pull it through onto your homepage as well. So again, it becomes down to making it relevant to the users. So if I just do save here, click on back, and there we go, it's now completely changed it. And I think engaging with kind of your users on actually what they want to be able to see on a daily basis will help them. Other elements, things that I really like is very simple things around duplication tools. So there are some fantastic now standard duplication tools that are available within Lightning. And don't get me wrong, there were some good tools that are available in Classic. The problem was there was a button there that you had to go and click to check duplicates. Again, if there's a button that you have to click, it's very unlikely somebody's going to click it. Whereas now it will automatically just push that information out to you. So does that company already exist? Do you then build in rules within the background that prevents people from creating other duplicates? And that shows across all of your objects. So it shows on accounts. The biggest problem that you sometimes always find with duplicates is leads. So we have very similar, where we have it here. So it will show you again if there's kind of any duplicates. And I think with the pages itself within Lightning, it starts to look, I think, is how we read Classic was very, sometimes, especially if you've got a lot of custom objects that you've built, you could be there for quite a long time scrolling down the page to actually what you're wanting to get to. It starts to kind of now group elements together. So if we look at accounts as an example, where you have all of your kind of related items. So starting to group elements kind of better, you get a bit more visibility around elements with your details tab. And these again are all changeable. So if you wanted details to be your default tab, then you can have that. If you wanted it to be related items, then you can. So I think the main point of it as well is any information that you've captured within Classic at the moment, you're not going to lose it. And I think there was a fear initially of people of, if we migrate to Lightning, we'll lose some of that content or some of the data. It will all still be there. It just looks very different now. Dashboards. One of the elements I have to say, what I like about dashboards is to be able to chop and change of what they are. For me, I like to be able to prioritize things. I'm also a very red, amber, green person. So my dashboard is just actually full of all numbers with red, amber, green. To me, green, it's fine. Amber, somebody's coming to my desk. Red, somebody's standing at my desk waiting for me to come in, and there's a problem. So you can start to be able to kind of look at all those elements. But what you start to also be able to do, and I can feel getting this there and I don't have to actually look up there. What I like is that you start to be able to make changes. So for instance, if this is really important to us, make it bigger. If there are lots more content in it, then start to make those charts as big as kind of what you're looking for. There are a lot of new features now kind of within the dashboards and reports that make life much more easier. They're also a bit more appealing, I think. They look nicer. I think you're able to now put in more information than what you were previously. If I just click done. And the benefits of what you also get with your reports now. So again, you can also kind of add some proper kind of charts to your actual reports. But you also get this element to subscribe. Your filters are much more easier to kind of customize as well now. So it's kind of all now kind of drop down boxes rather than kind of going back into the old kind of style of reporting where a lot of it was drag and drop. And also kind of your settings are there. So a lot of the information is still there. You still have the abilities to export, to clone, to these types of elements. It's really kind of the subscriber option that's very much different. Your kind of app launcher, so this is where you kind of start to then see, so very much kind of very similar. Again, all of the same features are still there. It's just presenting it kind of in a slightly different way. But again, being able to see instantly within accounts, kind of all of your kind of tasks, your activities, all kind of now in lists. So they give very much a historical view now of everything that's kind of happening with that. And it kind of gives you these timelines, so it starts to give you the next steps. So if you haven't, if you have an opportunity on there, or you haven't spoken to that customer or that lead within 6 months, it will start to populate what those next steps are. And it goes back to my kind of point from earlier on of, you're effectively kind of hand-holding, certainly from a sales perspective, which is where I will say you'll probably see the most benefit from it. The service side of Lightning has definitely improved over the last 12 months, and I know I'm just going to touch on some of the service sides. I don't want to touch on it too much. From my perspective, I've seen the biggest benefits within the Sales Cloud element, and to be honest, that's where you'll start to see a lot of your return on investment from it, because if your sales guys are spending more time out on the road with customers, they will bring more return on investment into the company. And for me, traditionally, certainly within the UK, a Friday was always the sales guys' kind of admin day. So you would see offices were chock-a-block with people coming in to do all of their admin. That doesn't happen anymore because it's constantly kind of refreshing, telling them kind of what they need to do. They're not constantly chasing things that they don't need to do today. It's all very much kind of there for them. So that's kind of a very quick look into it. I have just a couple more slides to take you through. Which is now the tools to help you prepare. And I have to say, I really do wish these tools were available 2.5 years ago, because these are all quite new tools. So when it took us quite a long time of those assessments, I would say you can probably cut a lot of that time now, because there are some fantastic tools there. So the migration assistant, so it's resources, steps for successful rollout. You've got preview modes now, so you can evaluate kind of your own live environment to what it would look like within Lightning, what's going to work, what isn't, and then kind of helps you kind of with that controlled rollout approach. So the Lightning Experience Readiness Check. So I think, Paul, you'll share these slides anyway. So that is the link to it if nobody's used it in the past, or you can effectively go to it within Salesforce. If you still use it, if you're in the classic mode, you will see the Lightning Experience Migration Assistant up on the left-hand side. You click Get Started, and it just takes you through the tool. It's not going to enable anything for you, so don't panic. You're not going to get to the end of it and it now says you've now switched it on. It will just take you through the steps to actually generate a document. So it will give you kind of specifics, and I was talking to kind of somebody earlier on around that, where it will now give you, it will pinpoint exactly where you're going to have problems. So if you have particular Java buttons that won't work within Lightning, it will tell you what those Java buttons are. You don't have to now spend hours and hours and hours testing individual each button, which is what I had to do 2.5 years ago. It does tell you those user impacts, so it will show you if you still have people that are on standard profiles, because there are probably some people in there that you don't imagine are still on it. And then kind of your next steps to success. So it kind of really takes you through kind of what you should do next. And this is kind of effectively kind of a bit again of kind of what it looks like. So it does kind of take you step by step. So it's emailed to you, it comes in a PDF format, so you can share it with kind of any other users. I would certainly pull a pilot team together on it, work through those kind of different elements, and that's kind of where your really starting position is. It now kind of tells you all gaps. Before the Lightning Readiness Report, it just kind of used to give you a bit of a taster. What was come out as part of the last release, so it now does cover even notes, attachments, these types of elements. If you're using Console, so again from the service perspective, if you're starting to use it within there. Visualforce pages now wasn't included before, it's now something it will highlight. S controls, I don't think many people still use S controls, but you never know. Live agents, knowledge, entitlements and solutions. So effectively it's kind of covering kind of all of your different kind of areas of where you could potentially have some issues. And again, kind of around that kind of Visualforce check. Because that was quite a stumbling point initially. I have to say there's a lot of work that's went in the background from Salesforce to help resolve that. But again, if you are still legacy using a lot of Visualforce, this will kind of help you through those changes. There are a huge amount of resources out there. There are more customers migrating to Lightning than ever. And certainly I noticed from being at Dreamforce last year, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Salesforce have made it very clear that's where the investment is going. So there are huge amounts of resources, either through the Trailblazer community, whether that's through your own Amsterdam user group, or join some of you're more than welcome to join some of the other worldwide ones. There are some specific groups as well that look at just Lightning, so there are Lightning readiness groups, there are hints and tips groups, and also kind of looking at the trailheads. To me, Trailhead, when it got launched, I kind of seen it as a bit of a gimmick initially, if I'm really honest around it. I think it's a really powerful tool. It really does help you take step by step. You can build your own kind of org, your own demo org, to be able to test things within Lightning as well, rather if you're quite nervous about doing it even within your own sandbox or your own production environment. So yeah, definitely check out kind of some of those groups. And the Ideas Exchange as well, Lightning isn't there yet 100%. I don't think even Salesforce would say that is themselves. If there are things that you're finding that are not 100%, then use the Ideas Exchange. It's a great place to be. And obviously kind of the more votes it gets, the quicker it will go into the releases, hopefully. And just a bit about me, so if I'm here for the rest of the evening. If there's any hints, tips that you need, please speak to me here. Please feel to get in touch. As I said, I've worked with a number of organisations over the last 10 years. In May of last year, we set up our own company, which is what we now do. We help strategically build customers' roadmaps with Salesforce, migrating a lot of customers to the Lightning platform, and we've kind of just migrated a customer who've got about 27,000 users over, and we're going through that process that's going to take us probably the next 18 months to do so. But certainly, yeah, if there's anything that you need, give me a shout either tonight or please get in touch. And that's me.